Welcome to Coffee and the Bull.
Prepare to be amazed in wonderment.
The joke of the day. I worked all day on this. So
you hold the dad joke cards in your hand.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is a cat's favorite vegetable? Now, if you're gonna try, you just no effort. It's 100% a one-way street right now. No effort. It's asparagus.
I don't get that.
A cat's favorite vegetable.
Asparagus?
Per.
I think some enunciation would have made that joke go a whole lot further.
How do you find Will Smith in the snow?
No idea.
You follow the Fresh Prince. Okay, so.
Yep, thank God.
Yep. Got that out of the way. Hey, guys. Mike and John with Coffee and the Bull. Want to say thank y'all for taking a moment out of your day and giving us a listen. Hopefully you get something out of this. If not, still hit the like, subscribe, follow button, do all that stuff. Send us an email, say, hey, guys, y'all are doing an absolutely phenomenal job. Y'all changed my life. Whether we did or didn't, that's fine. It's perfectly fine. We can take some false comments there. But on a different note, today is actually going to be my wife's birthday, so if I don't say it later, happy birthday. So,
what's it like to be 21?
Right, yeah, she's not 21.
Just kidding. She's about to get
Girl's
those
got
letters
some
from
years on her.
AARP.
She's got some years on her. That's all I got to say.
Hopefully good
not
years.
That spring chicken no more. I don't know. I'm rambling.
Yep.
So today we're going to be talking about the title of this episode is going to be "The Shit Show Must Go On." And for those of you who've been with us through the beginning, welcome to the Shit Show was our first episode. And one of the things we talked about in that episode is how there's like an awakening moment.
Yep.
That we see a lot, mainly with younger cops, as a transition out of the fantasy idea of what they thought law enforcement would be into a more realistic approach. And it, unfortunately it follows something bad happening. It's never 15 people come up to you and say, hey, thank you, you made a difference, and that's never the awakening moment. It's always when you just it's something terrible has happened.
Yep.
And so that's one of the things that we try to incorporate, and it happens with the examples we gave were in law enforcement, but for a lot of guys it's going to be regardless of what the profession is. It's more of a life approach of hey, this isn't what I signed up for.
Right.
You're looking around and if you go look at 18-year-old yourself, looking at 38-year-old yourself, you might consider yourself a failure, in your 18-year-old's eyes. And so it's one of those things where it's like, hey, the path that you're on isn't what you laid out, and so it's as you navigate life, it's a moment of, hey, welcome to the shit show. Well, the issue is you don't get a stop once you get to that moment.
Right.
You don't just get a camp out there. You don't get a setup, hey, this is home base, and I don't ever have to go through this again, because that's one of the things we have with like newer cops, as they're going through the training phase, or even after they've been cut loose and they're on their own. Whenever that moment happens where it's like, hey, whether it be a bad car crash or a murder scene or something like that, and you see a senior guy will pull the young guy aside and he's like, hey man, welcome to the shit show. It's followed up
right.
with you acknowledge where they're at, but it's followed up with instructions after that. It's, hey,
right.
You need to do this. You need to start collecting statements. You need to take pictures. You need to look for evidence. You need to all these different things. There's a list of things that have to be done,
right.
And that's where this is coming from. Is we spent the first or the tail end of 2024 discussing kind of where guys are at. Hey, we're in a spot where you don't see a lot of mental health. You don't see or a lot of help going towards guys. It
you see a lot of bias as well.
You see a lot of bias, and you see a lot of people saying, hey, look, we don't have anything, but that's it, And so we spent a couple dozen episodes taking and pointing out, hey, this is where guys are. This is where where we're struggling at. This is the things that we battle with. Whether it be alone or or with our family or whatever the
Life in general.
life or whatever the problem may be. It's hey, this is where they're at. Well, now comes time for the instruction. I think that's kind of where we're going with
Right.
for the next several episodes. Is all right. You can acknowledge where you're at, but it's time to move on. And like referencing in an earlier episode where I lost my job and my wife gave me the instruction. She said, "Hey, you take today.
Right.
Tomorrow it's time to get back to work." And that's kind of where we're at. It's where if you've been listening up to this point, it's time to move on. We're not going to harp
Right.
on here. We're not going to beat the dead horse anymore. Now we're going to change our dynamic a little bit. We're going to bring some humor into it. It's still going to have moments where it might tug at your heartstrings. It might have moments where it might be a little bit too in depth for you at this moment. Come
Right.
back to it later. All right. But for now, we're going to move forward in how to navigate from there. Right.
Right.
And so one of the things that we talked about prior to filming this episode is what are some of the things that guys struggle with. And I think communication come up. For all the women in the back, we heard you the first 75 times you said it. We get communication's an issue.
Right.
There's not a guy out here who is going to be like, no, I communicate very, very well.
Right.
It's we communicate very well to each other for the most
Right.
part, or depending on what we're doing, and if you don't, if you look at some of the tactical teams, whether it be SWAT or SRT or even the military teams, one of the things they've done is you focus on the type of communication that you do at that time. And what I
Right.
mean by that is, if we're off, in a briefing tent or whatever, we're going to be talking like normal. But obviously on scene, we don't need to, if we're about to boot in a door, you don't need me at the front door going, "Hey, John, we're about to boot the door,"
And I'm
like
two
that,
guys back going,
and
okay.
meanwhile, the guy inside the house with, who's got, a different mental state is like,
Right.
"Oh, here we go,
Thanks for the heads up.
Right. And so it's there's levels of communication that are appropriate at different times,
Right.
And so, one of the things like tactical teams do is they've developed ways of, as they're like clearing houses and stuff like that, is they'll do it non-verbally. There's a series of signals, whether it be gun movements or hand movements, or just a swift kick in the butt to say, "Hey, let's go."
Right, right.
Whatever it is, it's
Hard
meant
shoulder
to
taps
be
and tugs
effective,
and
it's very effective. It's helped apprehend subjects. It's save lives. It's whatever. It's very effective.
Right.
But if you don't know the communication,
You don't know the code.
if
then-
you don't know the code
right.
to it, then
Which is the whole purpose behind it, because you don't want whoever
Right.
or whatever your objective is to know what you're doing and what your movements are.
Right.
That's more of a silent communication, which is yes and no what we're talking about, because I know plenty of husbands and wives who have that silent communication. When a husband's able to look over at his wife at a party and she gives him the look and he's like, "All right, folks, time for us to wrap this up and head to the house."
that usually means I've had a little bit too much to drink.
Right,
And it's-
right,
and
right.
she's not happy with me.
Or Dave's wife has hit my limit. But I'm 100% with Mike on this as far as the communication goes, because number one, men and women are different in their communicative skill sets,
Right.
and how they communicate and which way they communicate. I don't think it's necessarily an educational thing. And if anything, the military, law enforcement, structured workplaces kind of give you that perspective on it, because you look at your average military or even your average law enforcement agency, fire department, all those places, you have everyone from way different walks of life.
Right.
It's why they say, like, you can't be racist in the military, you can't be sexist in the military, and it's because you have so much of a goulash of different people and backgrounds and nationalities and religions and everything else, that you just can't have an ugliness to you. But with that, we don't always communicate the education level. You can have, and I've seen relationships where, the husband is a super genius, can't change a tire, but the wife is like just your average run-of-the-mill. She's not college educated, she's nothing fancy, but they can communicate in their own way. And so basically where I'm going with it is the communication side of this isn't necessarily based on an education level. It's not based on that. men and women communicate differently. And so we've got to learn as men how we're communicating with our spouses, and our spouses have got to learn some beyond patience, because sometimes patience is not enough for a man.
Right.
Like, we're going to need a little extra of the thing. Because, like, I know with my parents, my dad's give up slogan was "Yes, dear." And I catch myself, I've caught myself several times in my previous marriages when I just didn't want to hear anymore. Like, "Yes, dear." Like, that's just I don't even want to fight you. I don't want to argue with you, whatever. And to be fair, like, I don't know how a couple, I didn't come into adulthood knowing how couples communicated. My parents wouldn't have conversations
Right.
in front of us of depth. Now, obviously, they talked in front of us, but anything of serious nature, bills, finances, that sort of stuff, that was all done behind closed doors. They didn't want to have arguments in front of us. They didn't want screaming, yelling matches
Right.
in front of us. And so I never learned healthy communication between two consenting adults in a marriage or a relationship or anything else. What I had was examples of other couples, like aunts and uncles and grandparents and stuff like that. And so for me, I've learned through the course of many failed relationships that it's not what I'm saying, it's how I'm saying it. And if I approach a situation in an aggressive and ugly manner, that female that I'm speaking with is going to immediately be on defense, because she's like, whoa, whoa, I'm sitting here watching, TV. Why are we attacking me just to see if I'm going to do the dishes or you're going to do the dishes or whatever the case may be?
Well, I find that that's an area obviously where a lot of guys struggle.
Right,
is communication. And before anybody starts sending hate mail that y'all don't send, or emails that they don't send.
Right.
Before we get into that, it's when you really look at it, every guy out there, we struggle with communication. You may want to act like you don't, but when you get down to it, a lot of people are going to get mad at you, or a lot of people who do get mad at you is because you're not communicating right. And what I mean by that, so my wife, there was a point in time where we went through a hurricane, right? In 2012, we were living in LaPlace, Louisiana, and Hurricane Isaac hit, right? And unfortunately, my truck flooded that I had at the time flooded out, and insurance totaled it out. And I remember I had this bright idea, right? Because this was an opportunity as I saw it. An opportunity like no other opportunity has ever been given to a young, 20-something-year-old guy. And it was, I didn't have a truck note at the time. So I'm like, all right, what I can do is take the extra money that I got from the truck, and I can go buy a sports car, right? But not just any sports car. I wanted an old, the old muscle car or whatever,
Right.
Like I've always been a fan of the 67 Camaros. And, anyway, so the issue came in where there's what I wanted and what I could afford, and so somehow my eye found a 1981 Camaro, definitely not a 67. A lot of things different in it.
Yeah.
However, it was still an old sports car.
Right.
It still had big motor and 4 tires. Most of the time it had 4 tires, but it still had a motor. It's still loud, and it still went fast. And
Right.
that was the goal. And I remember I was talking to my wife about it, and I was like, look, this is what I want to do. This is why. And I had if ever there was a case presented that would explain why a dumb decision is actually a smart decision, that was it. Like, I tied in everything, hey, we don't have kids. I don't need to be responsible. I don't need anything reliable. I only live in a mile and a half from work, and all this other stuff. Well, she gave me the response that you would expect, or actually she didn't give me the response. The response I should have got, or that I expected was absolutely not, but then it would be,
An argument,
there'd be argument, tension, and I'll do what I want,
Right.
She gave me the ultimate female response. It was, you do what you want. I took that,
The same way every man,
the same way every
with their
guy
ears
out
on this
there,
podcast
who
are
hasn't
going to take
gone
that.
through this,
Right.
It's all the older guys are like, oh, buddy, don't
Right.
do it. If
Run,
you've been
run.
through it, hey,
Right,
he's going down a road.
This is gonna
that he
end poorly.
Can't come back from.
Right.
It's not going to work out. They're definitely the smarter sex. They understand
Right.
things that you just don't grasp right now, dummy.
And you'll never win that argument when you're like, you said do it. And they go,
right.
well, I didn't mean do it.
Well, because she said, hey, do what you want, I took that as go do what you want.
Right.
And so I called the guy, hey, I'm on the way. And I brought him a check, drove home the car. The car made it home, right? I'll give it that. I don't know how, but it made it home. I think one of the headlights stopped working halfway through. There was a exhaust leak, like all kinds of stuff. I was probably high as a kite from the exhaust fumes by the time I made it to my house. But anyway, that was probably the worst financial decision I ever made in my life. And I'm not exaggerating here. Like I'm literally everything on that car broke. It was like a rabbit, rabbits are fast animals, but they don't run but for like 30 yards. After that, they stop. Most people don't know that. They don't just keep, they're not gazelles. They run fast and then they stop. That's how this car was. It would stop after about 30 yards because something else broke in it. At one point, one of the tires come off, so I fix it, and then later another tire comes off. And so it was just one of the things where it's like, if only she'd have told me don't go do it.
Right.
Then I wouldn't have a problem. That's how I logged it. For that moment in time, it was well, I asked her. Now she's mad at me because I don't have a car. Well, no, she told me. In a way not to do it. But that's much like the we joke around about it. And a lot of your older guys, we've all been through it. We now know, hey, if a woman says do what you want, it does not mean do what you want.
Right.
It means you need to start reevaluating what you're going to do because you're going down a road that's going to get you in trouble. In the same way we do that is a welcome to the shit show type reference. But that's also the instructional side of things. When you start getting, because what happens is all your older guys, like we sit back and you should have did this, buddy.
Right.
Well, where were you in the middle of it? And granted, sometimes people just have to learn from mistakes. But in that same scenario or same instance where every guy had been through that, or every older guy who's been in a lasting relationship has been through that. They knew what those words meant the moment I said it.
Right.
There's a lot of what guys go through across the board that is universal. It's something that we're all going to touch on, and it's something that we can pass down to the next person. In the same way that a rookie officer can benefit from a seasoned officer. In the military, experience always gets passed down.
Right.
Unfortunately, it doesn't get passed down enough.
Or in the correct manner, in a way that you're going to receive that information.
Right.
But
so, well, before we go off of it, staying on communication for a minute, we get mad at other guys because when I call you and say, hey, how are you doing? You're like, oh, I'm good.
Right.
There's a message behind that. Most of the time there's a message behind it. It's not that you're doing good. We're just giving an answer the same way a female does. And now we want to get mad because nobody knows what we're doing. Well, we're talking in the same, different language that we get aggravated that causes a lot of issues for us. So I think that's something where we got to start trying to address it a little bit more.
Right. Now, the only thing I want to touch on what you put out there was, ladies, when you say do what you want, and he does what he wants, 30 years later, you don't need to keep bringing up that time he did that stupid thing. That's one of the things that drive most men crazy. Is just like I get when I do something, and it's a mistake. And you tell me, when we realize, you knew the whole time, but I realized it was a mistake.
Right. That's
your moment. That's your moment to say, hey, you screwed this up. You should have listened, even though I said you do what you want. That argument, this is part of it as our brains work, is when we make a mistake, we don't want to be reminded of that mistake repeatedly over and over and over and over again. There's much like you lost your job, take today, and tomorrow get on it. Our brains and the way that we work and the way that we heal from it is there's a time for it, a time to heal from that mistake. And sometimes it's something stupid as buying a car. Sometimes it's something as dumb as forgetting your birthday or, making a mistake. We got to heal from it, and then we can move on from it. But what we can't do is confide that in you and in that mistake, and then continuously be having our noses rubbed in it.
So I'll give that to you with an exception, all right? Because I know a lot of guys, and when I say this, it's coming from a standpoint of, at my last job, I was a supervisor, right? One of my first agencies, I was a supervisor for a while, and I had the benefit of